In a minute, we're going to be joined by Jake Matthews, another youngster, second youngest fighter in the UFC right now. I say another. I was thinking about Amir Khani. It is approximately 6:57 in the morning where he is calling us from Melbourne, Australia. Of course, Australia, another hotbed for mixed martial arts, and there are rumors of a big show happening down there in around November of this year. So I'm sure he's hoping for that, but of course also probably hoping to get back on the horse sooner rather than later. Same situation as Joanne Calderwood in a sense, although November is a lot further away than July, so he'll probably get back on the horse at least once or twice. Has looked very good in the UFC. He was on Tough Nations, of course. Didn't win that show. Went out there, got a win, and then since returning to the UFC, has looked very good and is one of those prospects to watch. 8-0 right now, and certainly climbing up the ranks and getting a lot of attention in doing so. I believe he is joining us. Yes, he is. Let's go to the Skype machine. Very early in the morning. There he is. Jake Matthews. Jake, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Aerial. How are you?
So what time is it over there? Is it in fact 6:58 in the morning?
Yeah, exactly 6:58 in the morning. Yep.
Wow.
So nice and early.
Is this crazy for you? Are you a morning person, or is this a big nuisance?
No, I'm a morning person. I'm always up early regardless. I always love to get up early and just get the day started.
So I know it's summer over there, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be, but it's not very warm here in Melbourne.
Well, I'm not feeling too bad for you. You know, there's a historic blizzard here in New York City. People are freaking out.
I've heard that. Yeah, they're calling it the blizzard of 2015. I've heard. So hope everyone's staying safe.
You spent some time in Canada when you were on the Tough Nation show, and it was snowing over there. Are you a snow kind of guy? Do you appreciate the snow, or are you more of a warm weather beach kind of guy?
I'm both, but I love the snow. But just here in Australia, we don't have much. I think there's about three mountains in Victoria where I'm from that actually have snow on them, and it's only for a couple of months at a time a year, so we don't get much here.
So you haven't fought in a couple months, but yet I see, and correct me if I'm wrong, a bit of a black eye over there.
Yeah, a little bit. Had a big sparring weekend with some of the guys from the Tough Nations. They
Okay.
came down from. We all converged here in Melbourne. Had a big sparring weekend, so I got a little bit beaten up, but just recovering at the moment.
A lot of people wondering what's next for you. Do you know yet?
I have no word, no. But I'm not in any rush to have any fights. I'm only young, so like let's say it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm just going to wait it out, see what the UFC have in store for me, and just take it by ear.
Although I liked very much after your last fight, you called out Joe Ellenberger. So you seem to be the kind of guy who knows what he wants. You know who you want next now, because I don't know if Joe makes sense right now.
Yeah, well at that time it did.
Yeah.
Joe I think was we're both 1-0 in the UFC, and Joe has a big name behind him. He's Jake Ellenberger's brother, so people would want to watch that fight. They know who he is, so it made sense. Yeah, but he unfortunately came off a loss. So yeah, I didn't have anyone else in mind. At this point, it's just whoever the UFC think I'm ready for, and I'm just ready for a step up
So
and
you're
just get the job done again.
you're 20 years old, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Second youngest fighter in the UFC. In a million years, did you ever think at 20 you'd be doing this on this stage, the major leagues of MMA?
It was always the goal to get in. I always wanted to get in young, try and be like one of the youngest UFC fighters. Um, but in reality, I always thought about mid 20s when I've had a lot of fights, got the experience up. But I worked really hard. I was training up to twice a day, even when I wasn't fighting the UFC. So I guess when you put in the work, it sort of makes sense. But yeah, no, it's a big privilege to be one of the youngest UFC fighters.
So as I mentioned, you were on Tough Nations. It didn't go your way. Was it hard because a lot of those guys on that show, they're a lot older than you, a lot more mature. I mean, they've been through a lot. You're just a youngster. You're in your teens, far away from home. I mean, as far as possible. You're in Canada, up north, Montreal, that stuff. Was that just difficult being away? Were you homesick?
Yeah, a little bit, but yeah, that's not no excuse to not win the fight. I just didn't perform on that day. Um, it was a different environment without the crowd, and you have all the cameras, and there's no entrance music, and it's a bit quiet. So it was a little bit different. and that was the first time I'd ever fought inside an octagon. All my other previous fights have been inside a boxing ring. As I think most people know, here in Victoria, the octagon was illegal, so all my fights had been in a ring before that. But yeah, the environment was a little bit different, but I just didn't get the job done on the day.
So has the ban on the cage in Victoria, has it been officially lifted?
Well, not as of yet, but the government party that wants the cage to be legal, they're now in power. So hopefully it'll get overturned soon, and we can get a UFC event going here in Melbourne.
From what I understand, after the show, you decided to go to Albuquerque to train with the Jacksons team, and you thought you were going to get a call. You were with Kyle Nelk over there to fight in the UFC, but the call never came. You had to go back home, get a fight. Then you got the call. How disheartening was it to go over there, to move away from home, to be on your own again, and never get that call?
It was hard. That wasn't the reason I went over to Albuquerque. I just wanted to go over and really measure myself against those guys that are in the top echelon of the UFC. And just experience a different environment over there. I'd never really been over to the States, let alone trained over there. So it was good to measure myself against those guys, see where I was at, what I need to work on. And yeah, when I found out that I wasn't going to be on the finale, it was a little bit disheartening. But I called my dad, spoke to my dad, and he just said, you know what, I'm going to get back in there, get the wins up, and we'll be back in there by year's end. So we did that, and got the call up for UFC in Auckland.
So it's interesting that you mentioned your father. Your father is your coach, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Your brother, who's around 16, 17 right now?
Yeah, he just turned 17 in November.
17, he's your main sparring partner.
Yeah, he was back from my Auckland fight. Now we've got a good team together with Daniel Kelly, Richard Walsh, Brendan O'Reilly, who all converge either in Sydney or in Melbourne and spar now. So I've got some other sparring partners, but for that fight, we had a 6 meter by 4 meter sort of shed in the backyard, and that was my main gym for my fight in Auckland. And
wow,
yeah, my little brother was one of my main training partners for that fight. So it's stepped up a bit now. I've got my own gym, a nice big facility, and good training partners together. So so people can expect another step up in my level again.
But you say your own gym. Do you own the gym?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Wow.
Myself and my dad.
That's amazing. And what does your mom do? She's a part of the team as well, right?
Yeah, my mum's sort of, I guess, my nutritionist. She cooks all my food, makes sure.
That's amazing.
My diet's all in key. Yeah, still makes my bed for me in the morning. So
lovely.
She takes care of me, and she's always front row supporting.
And your brother, does he want to be a pro fighter as well?
He hasn't had a fight as of yet. I guess it's sort of up to him. He loves training. He loves being around the gym. Loves hanging around with all the guys from the gym. So I guess wait till he's old enough, and if he wants to jump in there, he can. He's definitely going to be a monster. He's already given me a hard time. He's only 17, so he's definitely going to be a good fighter if he chooses to go down that path.
Life must be so amazing for a 19, 20-year-old fighting in the UFC, being on TV. I mean, you must be the belle of the ball. What do some of your friends do? Like, what are their typical jobs? Or if they probably are in school, I bet, right?
I've got friends in school. I've got friends that are in the workforce. They're either studying. I've got friends that work, from anything from pulling telephone cable. I've got friends studying law. So it's just from one extreme to the other. But they're all just normal people. I don't really have too many good mates that are fighters. They're all just average guys. I sort of like it that way. You sort of get to get away from the gym, away from fighting, just hang out with your mates, and sort of just not think about fighting for at least a few hours a day.
Do they all support you? Go to your fights?
Yeah, they all support me. They all came up for the Sydney event, and even before the UFC, they're always front row. And they've been my mates since early days in high school. So it's good to have that support around.
Why is your nickname the Celtic Kid?
Well, at the time we came up with the nickname, my great grandma passed away, and she put together like a heritage book, like an ancestry book, following our lineage back, and we found out that we originally came from Scotland. So we wanted to throw the Celtic in there. And I was only about 16 at the time, so he sort of threw it together, Celtic kid, and yeah, it's just stuck ever since.
So, do you really want to fight on that Scotland card that was just announced?
I just saw the card yesterday that was announced. I'd love to fight in Scotland. I've never been there. Be able to go see some distant relatives and just be able to fight, in a country, where my roots are from. And I think with a Celtic kid, I think it would just work. So I'd love to get out there and get a fight in that Glasgow card.
And from what I understand as well, you're a big Conor McGregor fan.
Yeah, I'm a massive Conor McGregor fan.
Why?
Just the way he goes about not only fighting but the way he promotes himself. He's probably the best self promoter in the game, and his fighting style, he backs it up. He just destroys everyone. It's hard to see anyone beating him. He's just that guy at the moment that just when the Oda Machida was at his peak, and John Jones, you just can't see him being beaten. And I just really like his fighting style, and yeah, he's just a good fighter.
And coincidentally, you're now represented by his management team, Paradigm.
That's right. I'm the new member on Paradigm. I'm super excited, especially signing at the start of the year. And I know 2015 is going to be a big year, so to have them behind me, yeah, I can't wait to see what they've got in store for me.
Did you reach out to them because they were Connor's guys, or did they reach out to you?
They contacted me. I've heard of them before, and it was a sort of coincidence. Myself and my manager Gary Scott, who's actually joined up with Paradigm now. We were actually looking at Paradigm and a couple of others to approach. Just so happened that they approached me at the exact same time.
When you were growing up, Connor wasn't around, of course. Who was the guy that you tried to emulate, that you dreamed of fighting like? When you were growing up, you're growing up right now, but when you were younger.
Yeah, George St. Pierre was always the guy, and for me, he's still my all-time favourite. I always sort of try to emulate him inside the octagon, but more so outside, the way he's humble.
Mm-hmm.
He's humble in victory and defeat. He just carries himself like a professional athlete. So I definitely try and be like George in every aspect of the game.
And as I mentioned earlier, there are some talks of the UFC holding a massive event in Melbourne this coming November. 55,000 people, could be very well the biggest event in UFC history. I'm assuming that's a goal of yours, right? You want to be on that card.
No, I will be on that card, absolutely. I'm going to do everything in my power to get on it. I want to be the Melbourne guy on the card. I want to be the draw card that everyone wants to come and see. That's going to come with winning fights before that. So I'm going to get in there, get the job done, and close out the year with a big performance and a big win in Melbourne.
Can they really sell out a 55,000 seat arena? Can they actually? Is it that popular there?
UFC in Melbourne is the mecca for UFC in Australia.
Oh.
The events in Sydney and Queensland, I think it'd be safe to say that half the crowd in those events came up from Melbourne. Just massive following, massive support here in Melbourne for the UFC. So I believe they'd sell it out, and it'd sell out fast.
Well, I wish you the very best, Jake. Thank you so much for waking up early for us and coming on the show. And congratulations on your early success in the UFC. Best of luck. And I look forward to your next fight and seeing you on that Melbourne card later on this year.
Thanks, Aerial. My pleasure.
All right, there he is, Jake Matthews. Remember that name, a very big prospect in the UFC coming up. He has won his first 2 fights. Defeated Wagner Hosha in November. Defeated Deshaun Johnson, 155 pounds. Earlier I said he was 170. But the Celtic Kid, as he calls himself. I said Celtic. I wonder what's the difference between Celtic and Celtic. I mean, I know they're spelled the same way, but what is the difference? Someone let me know.